Tom, are you on there?
I'm on.
So who's the third one?
No idea.
Jan Yeomans is also on.
Oh, hi, Jen.
Good morning.
Good morning. We're having trouble getting in, so forgive my outburst.
It's quite all right.
Well, if this doesn't work, at least we know we have a new intercom system in the office.
Exactly.
Run the numbers dialed up.
Usually we hear them in the room or something.
I'll call the chancellor's office.
Okay, thanks, Tom.
Shelby. You guys are good, but you're not Randy, okay?
I will certainly, Will let him know.
Will never be Randy.
And I'm really okay with that.
That's the update.
And then the resolutions.
Let me tell you a story. Last night, we had talked earlier about yes, so there is a resolution for Harold now, but Sam wants to read it and do an unresolved, since Harold didn't want one, sort of a joke thing as he reads it. Now, the real resolution is perfectly good and clean and respectful, but Sam, I think, wants to pull his... That just changed this morning, so that wouldn't be in the updated one, so when we do the resolutions, we just need to add... Where's the... Yeah.
The last one is Hannah.
He's not going to be here. So instead of Hannah, we will...
I'm doing okay. Well, what should I do now?
Harold first.
You don't need to acknowledge
Okay. They're the session day, so we don't expect him to call in, but if he does, we will go to Plan B.
Good morning.
Yes.
Oh yeah, dig in, man. So, nice.
Yeah. Not yet.
you can read it or
We're all lined up here. Okay. That's the Mansfield, the updated Mansfield motion.
Okay. No, this is not.
I'm sorry. Oh no, this is the system redesign too, that kind of thing. But that's affirming instead of the tuition things. Yeah.
Okay. I think I've got it. If I don't, somebody jump up and. So should I record?
Did you just get in?
I mean, usually we have a person.
Mike, what just yeah.
At 8 a.m.
Okay.
It wasn't very well attended.
Yeah, I don't think maybe you didn't know. Yeah, I thought we were starting at 9.
Hello?
That's okay. That's okay. I don't think
I could do it.
Okay. And are you still on? I am. Hi, I'm Nicole Duffy. I'm on the Speaker's office. Okay, thank you. We're not getting through. We're not connecting to like so we tried to call the chancellor's office to see what we could do. It happened yesterday too.
too bad it's raining today. Oh, really? So, you want me to read this one that says no?
Okay. Okay.
If you want to use the drive, otherwise we could clean up. That was ridiculous. All I can do.
So is she she's not going to?
I don't think she.
I mowed the lawn.
Scared. Feel free to get up.
All right, glad you asked. Thanks.
I do a lot of walking and I mow the lawn. Very sheepish.
Good.
Didn't hear anything that...
No, absolutely.
Video game, but...
All right. Oh, you're talking. I know you. I mean, I'll come back.
Hello?
Hello?
Is that you, Senator Swain?
Yes, it is.
All right. I called in the other line, too. Left in the thing back to where we were.
Really? Okay, well, I don't know what, they should have started by now. So,
Well, I got a message from Jen.
How about spending some hours?
Yeah.
part of our problem is Randy isn't there. Usually he kind of quickly follows up on these quadries in the middle of the meeting.
Did we all call 646 or the 669 number?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did.
All right. I'm telling Jen that now. Let's see what she comes back with.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, we don't do that. We don't have...
Vice chair. Yeah. There's like a lot of problems right now. Probably not as effective. They're all friends. Hang out.
Want all of them together too?
Right, and they're like on the call. That's the music thing. That's like a drama one. Really feeling because we're not. Yeah. Okay. That's fine.
Sounds like somebody types really fast.
Sounds good, but it's all unpacked.
Types really fast. Oh, me.
Delegate this. So it's not like
We're all on this is Zoom, right? It's not the other chorus call.
It says Zoom when you call in. I mean, we get through okay, it's just the connection isn't happening in the end.
Right.
Sounds like they
We're all
forgot
connected.
silence. Right.
I just went as a guest.
We hold our own.
We don't have a quorum.
How about sending a text to Cindy?
Yeah, I could try that.
We're getting desperate here. They're making decisions without us.
we're all friends here. And then we get to the resolutions.
Maybe they won't have a quorum.
Hey, number two.
I don't think, unless the person
How many of us are out here?
4 as far as I know.
Okay.
Yeah, when I called in, it's
Adam Wagon Sellers here, just to let you guys know.
Okay.
5.
All right.
Not sure, yeah.
Sounds like we're in.
yeah, sounds good.
All right, fine. Sounds good. Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Good morning. I heard the room quiet down, so I figured that was my cue for me to stop talking and get started. To everyone in the room and on the conference line, those viewing the webcast, let me say welcome to our fall or October quarterly meeting of the Board of Governors, Pennsylvania's State System of Higher Education. We are so happy and delighted to be here at IUP with this meeting. Let me thank again President Mike Driscoll and your entire team. We've had an absolutely wonderful couple of days here, touring the campus, meeting some of the students, an incredible event last night. Mike and I disagree, on the level to which we like Sweeney Todd, but I have to say the students were fabulous. Next time, please, West Side Stories, just a personal request. Anyway, thank you again. We're really so happy to be here. Can I call on Audrey to please do a roll call?
Senator Ryan Allman, Governor Audrey Bronson, Governor Joe Ardon, Secretary Sarah Gavalli, here. Representative Michael Hanna,
Adam Wagenseller is here.
Governor Donald Hauser,
Here.
Governor Rodney Kaplan,
Here.
Vice Chair David Mazer,
Present.
Governor Barbara McElvain Smith, Governor Marian Moskowitz,
Here.
Governor Thomas Mueller, Secretary of Education Pedro Rivera, Designee Nellie Ortega,
Here.
Senator Judith Schwank,
Present.
Chair Cynthia Shapira,
Here?
Vice Chair Harold Shields,
Here.
Governor Sam Smith,
Here.
Governor Brian Swat, Representative Michael Turzai,
Here.
Governor Neil Weaver,
Here.
Governor Janet Yeomans,
Here.
Chairwoman, we have a quorum.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. May I ask everyone to please rise to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Yes. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Yeah. Thank you very much. Let me just ask, can everybody who's on the phone hear us?
Yeah, actually, you're coming in really clear, Cindy. We're glad we're finally connected, actually. Thank you.
Yes, it's coming in well.
All right. You know how much I want to be connected, so that's good. All right. So everybody on the phone, please, when you want to speak, please speak loudly. In the meantime, please put your phones on mute. Okay. Let me just start off with a few comments. I guess the weather is finally going to convince us that fall is here. It's always my favorite time of the year. I still can't get out of the habit of thinking it's the beginning of the year. January notwithstanding, the beginning of the school year is the beginning of the year. That's all there is. And I'm sure a lot of people feel the same way. There has been a lot of activity going on since we last met in July. I guess the major piece of news, is that we have now welcomed on board our new Chancellor, Dan Green Steinman, sitting right here. And he's been on board for, is it 5 weeks, 4 days?
Yeah.
5 weeks, 4 days.
Who's counting?
Who's counting? Has completely hit the ground running, or biking in his case, and has already learned so much and has gotten involved so much in the fundamental foundations of our systems and our universities, has engaged in a tour, and has really already been working with so many of us on setting direction and moving forward. So we'll hear more from Dan in a minute, but I just can't say how impressed I am, and I know all of us are, who have gotten to know him a little bit and have worked with him these past few weeks with a level of energy, enthusiasm, and optimism that is really refreshing and for which we have a lot of gratitude. Thank you. So as we all know, almost 2 years ago, we started down this road of really undertaking self-examination about who we are and what we should be as a system and as 14 universities, and how we should go down that path, and we arrived very strongly at the idea that we will be driven by a need to help achieve student success. That is our driving force. And that related to that, our universities have to be successful, and it has to be supported by excellence in governance and leadership. So again, I reiterate that, as I have basically every board meeting since we started down that road. It's never leaving our minds, and we are pursuing it 100%, and Dan has become already an incredible leader in going that way. So I just want to say that these discussions are going to define our future, again, both as a system and as our universities. And by embracing that, we take on these challenges. We are direct and candid about it, but I also feel that we see a future. We see a bright future out there. This meeting starts us on our path to continue that momentum. And as I said yesterday, and I will repeat, it takes all of us at every level working together toward this singular goal to ensure that we are offering accessible, affordable, quality education to the citizens of the Commonwealth, that all of our students receive the best educational experience we can provide, and that we set them down a path to graduate on a timely basis and be on the road to career and personal success. We are keeping our eyes on the prize, a phrase obviously I didn't make up, but I think really fits because we are lots of disparate stakeholders with different sets of interests, but if we keep the primary interest always in front of us, then we can move together and we can find out and figure out how to work together. I believe we are truly at an inflection point for the system. These meetings here, yesterday and today, they actually denote a reset, to my mind, for PASHE that is going to be reflected in goal-oriented, data-driven strategies, operations, responsibilities, and accountabilities. The system is going to emerge as an asset and as a facilitator to our universities. We are going to move toward a culture that will change to enable and encourage all of us, all stakeholders, again, to work together with student success being the driver. So we are going to start to do things differently. Actually, we already have. We've sort of slowly evolved over the last 2 years to meetings which are much more about strategy and planning and real discussions and decision making, and less about rote compliance and control and acting as a bureaucracy. We changed the way we do business with our committees as well, the way we do workshops. But, to me those are important and those are good, but they represent and they're only a precursor to the real reset that is going to start to take place. So you'll see today we're going to have a discussion about the drivers and metrics that inform our budget request and our appropriations request. For too long, we've gone on the basis that we make a request to fulfill a gap. Sometimes we're more successful than other times. As Dan is going to talk about, we are going to continue down a road that is going to change the way we look at developing a budget request. This year, for right now, we're due to make it at the end of October, so we're not quite there yet, but we're moving down that path. It's just exciting to see the system transforming itself right in front of us. I'm so thankful that all of you are part of this team, and by that I mean this Board of Governors, the Chancellor, the entire staff in the PASHE office, and maybe most especially the universities, the councils of trustees, our incredible faculty, our staff who are actually doing the work on the ground. Okay, so Toward the end of the day, we'll have a little more fun. We'll offer some resolutions for a few of our colleagues for whom it will be their last board meeting, the last time together. That is always, kind of bittersweet, but it is a moment to say thank you, and I look forward to doing that. Okay. Before we move on to the next item, which is public comment, I want to note that the board met in executive session yesterday, October 10th, from noon until 2 p.m. So we will now entertain public comment. If anyone from the public would like to address the board, please come forward to the podium and state your name.
Chancellor Greenstein, Chairman Shapiro, governors, university presidents, and guests. Good morning. My name is Jamie Martin. I'm a professor here at IUP in the Department of Criminology and Criminal Justice, and I'm also the vice president of the Association of Pennsylvania State College and University Faculties, and we represent the faculty and coaches at our 14 great universities. I'd like to take this time to welcome all of you to our beautiful campus, well, except for Dr. Driscoll. I hope that you had some time yesterday to take a stroll through our Oak Grove and see all that's going on at IUP. On behalf of our membership, I would like to take the opportunity to thank all of you for the time and energy that you put forth in trying to improve the lives of our students and striving to fulfill the mission of our system, to provide a high-quality, affordable education for them. I also wish to speak on behalf of our membership in welcoming Dr. Dan Green Steinman. Dr. Greenstein, I think that you witnessed a couple of weeks ago when you spoke at the AppStuff Legislative Assembly, the excitement and hope that all of the faculty displayed when you gave your remarks. I know that you heard that we appreciate your leadership style. We appreciate your vision for our universities, your transparency, and your willingness to be inclusive and recognize the talents of the faculty and coaches at our 14 universities. We truly appreciate the willingness of you and the Board of Governors to show a commitment to making contract negotiations less contentious. We are pleased that you've included us in the numerous committees that are examining the challenges facing our universities and the state system. We're very hopeful that the leadership style that you have thus far displayed will continue well into the future. I see common ground in our views of our students. In your recent blog, you spoke very eloquently about the wonderful students that we have at our universities. One of the great joys of my life is walking into a classroom and interacting with my students. And I see the same things that you do. I see talented, committed students who are engaged and eager to learn. I've had the opportunity to teach some of the same students in their freshman year and 4 years later in their senior year. And I'm always amazed at the transformation in them because of what they've experienced inside the classroom and outside. It's fun to see them move from having a deer in the headlight look to becoming well-prepared and well-rounded young adults. I've also seen the transformative power of higher education as I interact with our master's and doctoral students. And I've had the opportunity to interact with our alumni and hear how the education that they received here at IUP prepared them for their careers. As you noted, a student at Lockhaven pointed out that the students attend our universities because they want to help others. And the vast majority of the alumni that I've had the pleasure of speaking with are doing just that, and they love to return to their alma mater. I also see common ground in our concerns about the challenges that our students face as they work on completing their college degrees. You've heard when you meet with students their concerns about the financial and other challenges that they face. I've had personal conversations, often during office hours, with young men and women who tell me that they're afraid they can't afford to return next semester or that they can't go on to graduate school. I've talked with them as they talk about not being able to afford their books and that they're trying to juggle 1 or 2 jobs, but finding time to go to class, and then they're wondering how they're going to pay rent or purchase food, etc. These are really heartbreaking stories to have to hear, and I think we all have to do better by our students. We share their hopes and concerns that you have articulated, and it seems that you share ours. We all know how critical funding from the state legislature is, and we believe that we, together, the state system and AppStuff, can more effectively argue for additional state funds when we are rowing together against the tide rather than rowing separately. So we stand ready to work together with you to do what we can to improve the lives of our students and to participate in helping to solve the challenges facing our universities. We hope that you and all of the university presidents will include and rely upon their faculty to assist in these ambitions. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment? Okay, thank you very much. The next item is a fun one. I would like to welcome to the podium our host, Dr. Michael Driscoll, President of IUP, to offer us some welcoming remarks and a presentation on behalf of the university. And as you come forward, let me just say again how appreciative we are of all the hard work that's gone into making us feel so welcome and to this being so successful today. We now get what it means to do things the IUP way.
Thank you, Chair Shapiro. With your indulgence, given our layout today, I think I'm going to speak from here, and we're going to have some students and folks come up and, again, with your indulgence, maybe share a couple of the seats next to you at the table as they make their presentation so you can see them a little more clearly than behind the podium over there. So it has been our pleasure to have you here with us yesterday and today, and I just am very appreciative, want to share the thanks with the many, many staff members who really made this happen. So thanks to my team for pulling this together with great cooperation with the system staff. So it's wonderful to have you here. We want to hear about students, so I'm going to jump right into that as my immediate. There are so many incredible students that I might bring in front of you today, introduce you to, as any of us would say if you were at our campuses. IUP is one of only 4 public doctoral research universities in Pennsylvania, but we like to say that we do things with a twist, and that is that our faculty work directly with our students from their first day on campus. So, you could be, as a student, learning about and working on zebrafish kidneys to expand our understanding of kidney disease. You might be working on some basic research in the physics lab to develop a novel sensor for time temperature degradation of products that will likely become a commercial item in the near future. You might manage a significant fraction of our foundation's assets as part of our student managed investment portfolio program. By the way, you might want to think about where your retirement funds are housed. They do great work. There are hundreds of these kinds of activities that are out there. What I decided I would do is feature 2 groups, 2 programs that have been serving hundreds of students a year at IUP for decades. And so that's what we'll look at very briefly in the time available today. The Robert E. Cook Honors College was created in 1996 at IUP, driven by the transformative experiences that Mr. Bob Cook had as a student here at IUP, and seeded by his generous philanthropy of about $10 million at the time. The Cook Honors College was the first of its kind in the state system, not just an honors program, but an honors college with its own residential experience. The second group that we'll feature today is IUP's Army ROTC program, which started here in 1950, and it's an exemplar. It won in 2014 the General Douglas MacArthur Award for Best Battalion, recognizing it as one of the 8 best ROTC programs in the United States. That's a pattern of excellence that's existed for a very long time. Its alumni include 12 generals, and the program stands at the heart of our association with the military. This year, IUP is serving more than 1,000 military-affiliated students, veterans, active duty, reserves, and their families. About 8.7% of our total student population is military-affiliated, and that starts in some ways with our dedication and our association with ROTC. What we'll do is we'll start with Mr. Kevin Barazansky, who's the Associate Director of the Cook Honors College, and a couple of our honors students will address you. And then we'll move to Lieutenant Commander Dennis Faulkner, who's our Professor of Military Science and leader of our ROTC cadre, and a couple of our cadets will be up here as well. So I'm calling Kevin to come forward with your colleagues, and then you can hand that off to the Lieutenant Colonel. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Driscoll. My name is Kevin Brzezinski, and I am the Associate Director of the Cook Honors College. The Cook Honors College is at its heart mostly about the power of ideas. And by exploring questions that have challenged thinkers throughout history, our nearly 400 students develop the habit of mind to both think critically and to engage each other meaningfully. The honors curriculum has no tests, no quizzes. It's all reading, writing, debate, and discussion. And our students, as Dr. Driscoll said, live and take honors classes in the same building, which makes it a distinct possibility that you could go to class in your slippers while drinking a cup of coffee. The question students confront at the end of each unit of study, what therefore should I do, ensures that discussion is not just an academic exercise, but is rather the basis for a personal philosophy of meaningful engagement with others in the world. I'm pleased to introduce two of our honors students, Keisha Irsey and John Garrison, who are here today to share with you some of their experiences as students in the Cook Honors College. Thank you.
Good morning, I'm Keisha Irsey. I'm a sophomore at IUP from North Huntington, PA. I'm a computer science major and I'm minoring in cybersecurity. My computer science classes tend to consist mostly of lecture and writing code, which is more solitary. However, the Honors College has Honors Core, which contrasts my computer science classes. Since it relies on other people, we discuss things every day in class. And we also do peer edits on our thesis papers. The Honors College's less solitary classes are a different type of class, which is very enjoyable, and the Honors College also has an amazing community. So last year, Whitmire Hall was under renovations, so the community was moved to Rotc Hall. But even though we weren't in Whitmire itself, the Honors College community was still present. And for me personally, it was actually the source of a friend group for me, along with being an office worker and being on the executive board of Rotc's Residence Hall Council. And we all became friends because we were in the same things. And my friend group, we would sit and do homework together in one of Rotc's study rooms. And we also had fun by visiting Whitmire because part of it was still open. So the friend group actually contained students from the Honors College as well as students who weren't in the Honors College, and I'm very glad for all of them. And along with a wonderful academic and social atmosphere here on campus, the Honors College also enables studying abroad, which John will go more in depth about. So it's been my goal to study abroad in Japan since high school, and the Honors College has a scholarship which is called the Achievement Fund. So I'm hoping to use that to study in Japan for a summer. And so the Honors College has different classes that are very refreshing from my lecture and code-heavy computer science classes, and also a generous opportunities to study abroad through the Achievement Fund. And the most important aspect to me, the one that I cherish the most, is the fact that the Honors College enables friendships through its amazing community. Thank you.
Hello, my name is John Garrison. I am an Asian Studies student and International Studies student here at IUP. Before coming to IUP and the Honors College, I came from Mansfield, Pennsylvania. Mansfield's a pretty small town of about 3,000 people or so. And I chose my major out of a desire to know more about the places in the world that I've always been interested in, such as Japan and China. My honors curriculum has opened my eyes not just to see the new ways in which I could be thinking, but also the new places in which I could go. So as a freshman, I discovered the Achievement Fund, and this really changed my life. I applied the first time to get funds to go to Korea for just a summer program. And while I was there, I interacted with students from all over the world, Korea, Japan, Greece, Italy, France, and many others. This experience not only granted me the opportunity to learn about different world cultures, but also my own. And now I have faces and personalities to associate to all these different countries that I never would have known before. The second time I used the Achievement Fund, I went to Spain with our Honors College director, Dr. This is a 6-week journey. It starts in France and you end in Finnish. Sea is just an endless ocean, and that was the rewarding view that we got in our group of 19. On the Camino, you experience a kind of community with all the different pilgrims and the different people in the program, and it's a friendship that's forged through hardship, mostly physically, emotionally, and mentally. In this final time that I studied abroad, I went to Japan for the spring semester. This was a place that I had always dreamed about since I was a child. It was in video games, television, and books, and it is a place I'd always thought about, but it kind of seemed out of reach for a very long time. But thanks to the honors program and the Achievement Fund, I was able to get my education and test, and this was a chance to put my education to the test and really learn about the country I'd idolized since my childhood. And now that I've had this experience, I am determined to make Japan a part of my future. As I near the end of my education, I know I cannot thank the honors program enough for everything it has done for me. Without them, I wouldn't be the same person that I am today. I wouldn't have climbed mountains, met such diverse people, or known that I can take on anything the world presents me. Before coming to IUP, I had rarely thought that I would ever really leave my rural community, but now I can only think about the different places that my education may take me next. Thank you very much.
Good morning. So I'm Lieutenant Colonel Dennis Faulkner. I run the IUP, the ROTC department here at IUP. I'm about to introduce you to a couple of our fantastic cadets that are really exemplars of the what we produce out of our program. Both of them are two of my top leaders. They're seniors this year, and really what many folks don't understand is it is those senior cadets that do most of the training planning of our lower classmen within the program. So they represent two of my top cadets. But before handing it off, I'd like to kind of tell you a little bit about ROTC and the successes that we've been having here. So the basic charge I have from the Army is to to recruit, train, and to ultimately commission approximately 20 new lieutenants, both for the active duty Army, Reserves, and the National Guard. We have done exceptionally well at meeting and exceeding that mission for about the last 6 years. And currently we are on a glide path to not only meet that, but to move closer to the 30 range, 5 of which of those being Army nurses, which is becoming an increasing part of our program. We currently have about 165 cadets in the total program, and this year we have about 71 freshmen that joined. So we are doing exceptionally well, and in large part that is due to the incredible support that we get from the university here and the cooperation that we have. So thank you, President Driscoll, thank you very much. At this time, I will introduce Cadet Major Ali Ippoliti, and she is currently our Battalion Executive Officer for the battalion.
Thank you, sir. As Lieutenant Colonel Faulkner said, I am Cadet Ali Ippoliti. I am a senior here at IUP. My major is English Pre-Law, and I am minoring in military leadership. In May, I will be commissioning as a second lieutenant in the Pennsylvania National Guard. Some of the reasons I chose to come to IUP actually was because my dad is an alumni from IUP. So that's the only real reason I applied here, because I am from Westchester and it is 4 hours away. But upon coming to this campus and seeing the Oak Grove and all the different things here at IUP, I realized that I really did want to come all the way out here, especially for the ROTC program. It is one of the top ROTC programs in the state. We have our own building, which is absolutely amazing because not a lot of other schools have their own building with their big supply room and their talk downstairs and all that different stuff. The opportunities that ROTC and IUP have given me is after my freshman year, I ended up going to basic training at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. That is where I realized that I 100% was in this military life. There I received a contract and scholarship for a 3-year commitment for the ROTC program. And from that, I now am in simultaneous membership program, which is an SMP cadet at a National Guard unit. What I do there is I shadow a second lieutenant and see what they do there, all the paperwork, how they interact with their platoon sergeant and their soldiers. So I am now a couple years ahead of my peers in the program because I have that opportunity to shadow a second lieutenant in the Army. And I'd like to welcome Cadet Strensky.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Cadet Joe Strensky. I'm from Johnstown, Pennsylvania. I'm a political science major here and minoring in military leadership. I'm also a senior. So I didn't pick IUP first. I actually went to Penn State for my first year of college. I thought that was the best way to go. I had a lot of scholarships for high school, and I really just didn't fit in. It was just the atmosphere I didn't feel comfortable in. So I looked into IUP again. I had applied in high school. And then after some deep thought, I told myself if I got into the Cook's Honors College and the IUP Army ROTC accepted me, I would go there. And sure enough, by April of 2016, I made the switch. And it was probably the best decision I've ever made. So here at IUP, I work for the Graduate Schools of Study and Research. I'm in the Cook's Honors College, ROTC, and the Political Leadership Society. The opportunities ROTC has given me specifically has just expanded my leadership beyond what I thought possible. I've been to Fort Knox twice, once as oppositional forces and once for advanced camp. And I was also sent on a cultural understanding and leadership program to Chile this past summer. I'm currently the S3, which means I run the operations of the battalion, or at least I plan them. So I do a lot of training, and I try to mentor as many young cadets as I can and keep them involved and stay in the program. And because of the facilities we have here, compared to any other school, I believe that we are the best, and we produce the best officers. Thank you.
I wanted to thank you very much for the opportunity to see. We have some phenomenal cadets, and we continue, and it's just continuing to grow. We did provide, because there's no way I could give you all the great stories that are out there. There's a newsletter that you have there. That a lot of those are stories from many of our cadets that the training opportunities they had over the summer, and just the great things that are going on with the program for a little bit more in-depth information. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. That was marvelous. That was really great. I just want to remind us all, that we are a system. I hope our presidents from Mansfield and Westchester won't get too mad at our president from IUP. I don't really care much about, President Barron. That's, too bad. But anyway, that was wonderful. Thank you. Really, really enjoyed that. And again, another tribute both to IUP and to all the great things about our system. I would now like to turn it over to our new Chancellor, Dan Green Steinman, to make his first official report to the board.
Thank you, Chair. On my fourth day of my sixth week, it will be a abbreviated and largely substance-free report, but some observations about my first several weeks here. Before I begin, I just wanted to acknowledge Professor Martin. Thank you so much for those remarks. They meant a great deal to me personally, but also because of the spirit of collaboration and that they demonstrate to work together to address our challenges effectively and in a way which works for our students. So thank you very much for that. I appreciate it. So in my first several weeks, I've spent a lot of time with the board, mostly with the executive committee of the board, which is a very engaged executive committee, which is a great thing. And I was reflecting last night that universities and systems that do well and succeed often because of the closeness of the relationship between the board and the chancellor or president. And so I feel blessed to have that opportunity here. I've also met with dozens of legislatures and business leaders, heard from hundreds, literally, of faculty and staff who were invited to, provide me with insight about opportunities and challenges that they see and have responded by email. It's overwhelming and beautiful in so many ways. I've touched down on 7 campuses, 4 of them very deeply through day-long university visits, and obviously spent time with our presidents, to whom I have to offer my thanks for keeping me in line, and even 1 or 2 times over the course of the last several weeks talked me down off the ledge, so thank you all for doing that. So my observations are really derived from those experiences. And there's only a handful, but I think they're worth calling out. So one of them I did mention in my latest blog, and Professor Martin pointed to it. It really has to do with the incredible students that we have here, that they are obviously here in a way to develop themselves personally, professionally, and so that they can go on into the world. But what's interesting to me is in the conversations I've had with them, they wish to do that not just for themselves, but so that they may then contribute to their communities, however they define those communities. There's a real powerful sense of wanting to pay it forward. And they speak often about students surrounding them who are no longer here, 40 or so percent, who begin a college career at one of our universities and somehow fall away along their journey, and are thinking actively, at least with me, about what they can do to surround those students with the support that they may need in order to succeed, which I found very powerful. And just an observation, again, last night I was walking over to dinner, and a woman came up to me and began to advocate for the Pennsylvania Promise Program, which is a kind of a free college program. And, was very articulate and incredibly well informed. But what was so interesting was that she told me her own personal story, which was someone who had come up through a very difficult childhood, found themselves not graduating from high school, thus not able to get financial aid and go to college, coming back some years later, I think she was 30 or 31, inspired by what she had seen around her, wanting to model for women and girls the opportunity for women in the sciences, and had chosen a course in chemistry in order to do that. And her interest in the Pennsylvania Promise was that so other students who had come from her background would be able to pursue opportunities that she had not been able to pursue out of college. And that was really indicative of what I have found amongst our students, and very powerful it is. If I look at our faculty and staff, the creativity and the insight and the passion and the innovation and the dedication to hard work is just profound, and it comes across in almost every conversation, which is often filled with exactly the kind of sentiment that we heard from Professor Martin, and then layered on with here's all sorts of things that we could do to even do better. And so you wonder, how can we unlock and tap into that incredible energy? And of course, in the faculty and staff generally, one also witnesses a degree of resilience. Folks have been through a lot in the last 4, 5, 6 years. Challenging times. And yet, despite the desire to want, to hope, to move forward to a better place for our students and for our communities. You can't come away from visits to various campuses or conversations with people from our various universities and not appreciate the distinctiveness of our universities. I'm struck by the meme, I'm too old to use that word, meme, but I'm struck by the meme which suggests that we're all the same. And it's a powerful and a pervasive and, quite frankly, in my view, somewhat destructive meme. So I thought I'd offer from the podium, if I may, to invite anyone who believes that is true to go with me on my campus tours. All 14 of them. I hope to do it again in the spring and a couple times a year. Just checking out presidents' faces, they're looking shocked. They have to do that more than once. To experience what I experience, which is how well and uniquely our universities serve their students, their regions, their regional economies, which are profoundly different in any state of this size, but perhaps particularly so in the state of Pennsylvania. The only caveat is if you do come and visit me on these campus tours, you have to bring your bike. I'm impressed by the commitment of our councils of trustees and thinking about the untapped potential that exists there in terms of thinking with us about how to evolve our universities and our system. I've spent a great deal of time in the Capitol. I am glad that I'm always going with a member of staff because that is quite the rabbit's warren of a building. and colleagues who work there, I admire you for your ability to find your way around it without trails of breadcrumbs and other devices that would normally be required in such a complex maze. And there are a variety of perspectives, naturally enough, go figure. But there's also a sense in which there's a great desire to want to believe in the Pennsylvania state system. I used to be, in my past life, I was an investor of sorts in a philanthropy. And my takeaway from my conversations in the legislature is almost of the skeptical investor sitting on the sidelines waiting for us to make that case. And that fills me with another sense of hope that together we will be able to make that case in an irresistible and irrepressible way. From more general observation, I think it's clear we're not alone in the Pennsylvania state system. The challenges we face, while they are very acute, they're not unique. That there are other systems, North Carolina, Georgia, Maine, Minnesota, New York, Massachusetts, and I could go on, that are experiencing in some degree and in some combination exactly the same range of challenges that we're facing. And they too are navigating a path in ways which are public and private, but always available for us through some form of inspection and interaction. So we're not alone, and we needn't feel that we need to make up all of the solutions that we need by ourselves. We're surrounded by a very active student completion or student success movement. We're surrounded by a rapidly growing workforce development movement, which is throwing off all sorts of increasingly evidence-based practices that can be used to address some of the challenges that we're facing, increasingly throwing off implementation guidelines, how you might at your own university or within your own system begin to implement some of these practices which are having increasingly proven success in improving students' path through college and into a career. And if I look back on that whole range of observations, it's a lot to say grace over. It fuels my personal optimism, confirms my view that we can succeed in addressing the challenges that we're facing. We must succeed. The cost of our not is too high. It's too high for our students. It's too high for the communities from which they come. It's too high for the Commonwealth. We have the talent. We have the grit. We have the determination. We have the technical expertise. And we will build the culture which enables us to move forward and within a handful of years restore the proud place the Pennsylvania state system, the minds of the people of this Commonwealth. So I look forward to working with all of you in progressing along that path. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Just felt the need to do that. Next item is our consent agenda. As you know, we have moved toward using a consent agenda to handle routine items and other items that have already been fully vetted in other public meetings. This is one of the ways, actually I'll just point out again, that the Board of Governors has moved in order to manage routine items differently so that we can spend more time talking about strategic matters. So items on the consent agenda will be moved as a block with one motion and one vote. The consent agenda items are shown in red text on your main agenda. Peter or Andy, I don't believe I need to read them. Okay. Right, okay. So at this time, I would ask if any member of the Board of Governors has a question about any item or anything that you want to pull and handle separately. It would be moved now and placed on the regular agenda. Is there any such item? Okay. Seeing none, I'm going to, is there any items? Okay, no, I did that. All right, so if not, I'm going to move that the consent agenda be approved as shown. May I have a second?
Second.
Okay, any more discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Thank you. Yes, on the phone, if you want to vote, everyone in
Yes,
favor?
aye. Mike
Thank you very
Gordon,
much.
aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, that motion passes. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, great. The next item on our agenda is an informational item with regard to system redesign. As I mentioned in my earlier remarks, nearly 2 years ago, we launched our top-to-bottom review of the state system. We have been acting on that report ever since, and with the help of our interim chancellor last year, we started to move from system review into system redesign mode and began mapping out strategic priorities for the system. So with the selection of Dan Green Steinman as chancellor, we sent a clear and unequivocal symbol that we are going to be bold and courageous in our efforts to transform the state system. I can only say that you don't try to recruit someone like Dan if you intend to remain status quo. That's just not going to happen. Anyway, so at this point into your 6th week in the chancellor's seat, I'm going to now ask our chancellor to further detail his thoughts and lead us in a dialogue on the next phase of system redesign. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So referring to the PowerPoint, want to give a quick overview of what the next steps of system redesign will look like. There we go. So these observations about where are we going, this is really my reflection rather than a formal statement from I think the Chancellor or the Board, but I wanted to orient the direction with a sort of vision of where we might end up. So let me encourage us to look at these words as illustrative as opposed to legislatively enacted. But the sense is that we're wanting to move to develop an organization whose constituent universities are able to build on their they're already very distinctive brands, they're already distinctive roles, and to establish for themselves a clear and competitive position in the part of the higher education market that they serve, to become even better than they are in serving the students and the communities and the employers in their region. Clearly, we want to emerge as an enterprise whose universities are focusing on sustainable student success. I use sustainable student success because we talk often about student success, meaning completion, meaning ability to move into a sustaining career, meaning access to an affordable education. Sustainability is important because unless our universities are able financially to sustain themselves, it's going to be very difficult for them to support the work and the success and the progress of their students. And naturally, we want our universities to be able to deliver value to the communities that they serve in the way that those communities require them to deliver value, again, getting back to their distinctiveness. In addition, naturally, we want to become a public system that enjoys the public's trust. And let's not forget ourselves, it's perceived by our faculty and our staff as a great place to work. So that's kind of an outline, where are we going? And how are we going to get there? And this is really building on the great work of the system redesign process that's been in train now for a while. By doing a number of things. We're shifting our culture from one that's focused on institutions, compliance, and reporting, working to rule, to one that's focusing on our students. A place in which all of us, faculty and staff, are highly aligned around the goals that we set for ourselves as a system and that universities set for themselves as universities working within the system. A place where universities have a high degree of autonomy in advancing their missions, developing their strategies within the overall context of the system. And in return for that higher degree of autonomy, we're asking a higher degree of accountability for their actions. So they may pursue the needs of the students and the communities that they serve to offer distinctive sets of educational programs and services that work for them and that they're accountable to the system in a different way for the work that they do. We want to unleash and inspire the talent and the creativity and the passion of our faculty and staff who ultimately are responsible for our students and their progress. When you think about it, you can't legislate student success from the Chancellor's office. Very disappointed about that. You can't do it from the presidency, or the provost, or the deans. The people who interact with our students on a day-to-day basis are ultimately responsible for their experience and their ability to proceed through college successfully.
Hello?
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 Yes, hello?
Who is this, please?
You called me. Who's this?
Oh, dear. Sorry.
Sorry.
We have
We had to
somehow
talk
have
to you
a...
on your first meeting.
Huh? We somehow have a technical difficulty. We apologize. Did not mean to call you. Are we good to continue, technical gurus? Are we good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Unlocking
It is a public meeting.
It is a public
And we call people and invite them.
Invite them in. In the interest of transparency and inclusiveness. Unleashing and inspiring the creative talent of those who interact with our students directly, and obviously using data and analytical rigor and research and evidence in order to inform our actions through these times. So that's the first slide is really about where kind of we're going. This really reflects a pretty significant change in how we're operating so that we can get. And so the question is, what do you do in order to support that significant shift in our operating model? One which is really a model that's relatively legislated and regulated from Harrisburg to one which is really driven by the creativity and strategic capability and leadership effectiveness and talent, faculty and staff talent in our universities. How do you do that in a way which ensures a high degree of accountability to the system and the state? So that has been the kind of question that's been out there. And then the next step in system redesign is to put in place the management framework which enables that to happen. So that's on the next slide. So that framework consists of a handful of pieces which we envisage developing over the course of 2018-19. So that by the end of this by the end of 2019 calendar year, we've got the kind of management infrastructure in place that now allows us to affect this shift. So I'm going to walk through each of these columns sequentially from left to right because they really put in place the infrastructure that I'm talking about. So the first, we expect to accomplish this by January, is to really come to some agreement about fundamental issues that we're constantly referring to, but at present lack substantive definition. Right? When we talk about students' success, what do we mean? Are we talking about completion rates, their ability to graduate? Are we talking about affordability? Are we talking about the salaries that they earn upon graduating? Are we talking about the relative investment that they make in their own education versus the salaries that they earn? What do we mean by student success? Similarly, what do we mean by university success? What does it mean for a university within our system to succeed? Does it mean it has a cash reserve of a certain percent of its overall operating budget? Does it mean that that university is deeply engaged with its community in a way that is reflected in its fundraising and partnership? I don't know. And perhaps as critically, what do we mean? What does it mean to be part of a system? Is our system's objective to sustain 14 universities that are wholly independent operating entities, entirely responsible for their P&L, for their financial sustainability? Each tub on its own bottom. It's a model. Are we a system which is responsible for 14 universities and as such will introduce budgetary mechanisms that enable those who are struggling financially to be funded at a higher level by, in effect, taxing those which are not? That's another model. Are we talking about a system which has 14 brands, each of them leveraging a set of shared resources, intensively sharing academic programs, thinking about students moving across institutions in order to obtain the courses they need to get to a degree that makes sense for them? It's another model. And what's been interesting to me in conversations that I referenced earlier, hundreds of them, all of these models exist in people's heads. And in the conversations we're having about what it means to be a system, all of those different perspectives are brought to bear without any clarity around which of these models we ought to be pursuing. So in order to begin to put in place the management infrastructure that we need to effect this transition from a system which is largely regulated from Harrisburg to one which is driven by the entrepreneurial and creative effort in its universities, we actually have to define these key terms, right? So we've convened a handful of task groups, 3, one for student success, one for university success, one to look at various different system models. And we've asked those task groups to come and make some recommendations to the board. The student success and the university success task groups will actually be recommending kinds of indicators we should be using around student success. Well, these are the things we should pay attention to. And the task group on systemness, we're calling it, will be evaluating different system models and looking at their costs and benefits, what they will do and not do for us, and make recommendations to the board. Those task groups, to the point the chair made earlier, are inclusive by definition, by design. They include board members, presidents, trustees, faculty, staff, students. I'm sure I've missed constituencies. Quite deliberately. So once those common understandings are in place, once we know what we're talking, once we agree what we're talking about when we're thinking about student success, once we have a shared understanding of what university success looks like, once we have a better, clear understanding of what we are trying to accomplish as a system, we can move on to the next step, which is to identify what our goals are as a system. Using some of the indicators that are recommended by task groups on student success and university success, what are the things we will routinely look at and measure and talk about going forward? And I'll show an example of this at the end of the presentation. And of course, once we have system goals in place, we can invite our universities to develop strategies, which they already have, to develop those strategies in a way which helps us understand how their work going forward will help the system advance towards its goals. And we can invite our universities to develop budgets which align with those strategies and which help us understand how they're going to resource progress towards their goals. And once we have those tools in place, we can also begin to think about or rethink how we allocate the state appropriation. Right? Once we understand what our goals are as a system, and as we begin to understand how our university strategies fit into those, help us achieve those goals, we can begin to think about what's the best, most effective mechanism to allocate the funds that are distributed to us by the state. We can think differently about how we set tuition and the levels at which tuition are set, because now these conversations, which are basically about revenue, are set in a context of strategic direction. Revenue contributes to budgets, which are developed to drive strategy. The outcomes, shown on the far right, put in place, sorry, missed one piece. With this infrastructure in place, we can build an accountability framework. We can ask our presidents, how are you doing towards your goals? How's the budget working? Where are you finding challenges? Where are you succeeding beyond your expectations? How can we support further development? Strengthen areas of weakness. So with a set of basic enterprise management tools, which you would expect to find, not just in any industry, which is often referenced in conversations around higher education, which you expect to find and do find increasingly in other universities and other systems, we can begin to have a different set of conversations about where we're going and how we're going to get there. We can begin to effect a transition to a system where universities are increasingly responsible for establishing their own future direction, at the same time held accountable for pursuing a handful of well-understood system goals. I want to spend a few minutes just fleshing that out with some concrete detail, drawing from a number of practical examples. So I'm starting with system goals. I want to show a handful of different approaches. So if you look at the state of Oregon, so 2 are drawn from states, Oregon and Texas, and 1 from a system, the University of North Carolina. If you look at Oregon, Oregon's made a simple statement. It focuses entirely on the attainment of the adult population. It expects that by 2020, 40% of adults between the age of 24 and 35, I think, will have a bachelor's degree or higher. 40% will have an associate degree or equivalent, and 20% will have a high school diploma. That is the way they understand public higher education in the state of Oregon will achieve that goal. And strategies and budgets that are developed for the public community colleges and universities in the state of Oregon are all designed in pursuit of that goal. And there's discussion and debate and negotiation about what any individual university or college will contribute to that goal. Simple, very focused. Texas, similar thing. They have a population level attainment goal, 60% by 2030. Will have some form of certificate or degree. But notice that in Texas, they went more deeply. Texas said, actually equity is also important. We need to improve performance within that of certain student groups. In Texas, that makes sense because of the large population of non-white residents. The only way to achieve that 60% goal is to do better with students who are historically underserved. They've set targets for credential productivity. How many degrees will we be producing every year? They've set targets for workforce readiness. Everyone who graduates will have some viable, marketable skill. And they've set targets for affordability. They've taken a much more granular approach than Oregon. And, as in Oregon, conversations with universities in the state, strategies developed by universities, budgets developed by universities, budget allocation is all driven by an evolving understanding of how individual universities and colleges contribute to the state's goal. In the University of North Carolina, the system, goals are set at the system level, not at the state level. And notice that the University of North Carolina system has gone even more granular. They talk about access. They talk about access of particular groups, low-income rural students. They talk about attainment. They talk about graduation rates. They talk about institutional efficiency. Of every 100 students, how many get through to some form of degree. They talk about the educational pipeline and improving its performance, K-12 to higher education. They talk about workforce. North Carolina talks about research productivity. Okay? And there again, at the system level, individual universities are asked to develop their strategies and their budgets. Budget allocation and tuition decisions are all made in light of these kinds of strategic goals. So in each of these places, you're moving to an environment where there's alignment around what higher education should achieve, should accomplish. And they're increasingly, you can see increasingly, development of tools and practices which are driven by these goals, rather than by opinions about where higher education should be going, how higher education should be funded, conversation, always political and ideologically driven, I think, in any context, but increasingly, where these kinds of enterprise tools are in place, you're containing that kind of discussion. So I want to close by just what might this look like. And I want to go to the University of North Carolina, not because I ever went to the University of North Carolina, just to see what it means for them. So there's the University of North Carolina, that's their system strategy page. There's the 5 areas in which they've established goals. There's each of the goals in each of those 5 areas. You can actually, so pick one under access, increase low-income enrollment. You can see graphically what their goals are and how they're progressing to achieving them. You can see instantaneously they got a lot of work to do on improving enrollment of low-income students. Okay? So you can look at the systems goals, and for each of the goals you can see how they're doing. But underneath it, look at the roll-up of the individual strategies. Let's go to East Carolina. I'm trying to think who to pick on. Let's go to North Carolina Central, one of the universities within the system. This is a sort of a sweated down version of their strategy. This is the goals that make sense for that university, right? And how, and this one shows low-income completions. And this is how they expect to move the number from 8,008 and, sorry, I can't read it, 808 to 961 over a several-year period, right? And these are their individual goals, right? Underneath this is a strategic plan, which shows how the university expects to achieve those goals, and a budget, which allocates resources accordingly, right? But notice on top is an agreement between the system president, Margaret Spellings, and the chancellor of the university. An agreement to perform against these goals, right? So you've got an opportunity now to understand in a very different way how our universities are working, how they're interacting with each other, and how through interacting with each other, they're moving towards system-level goals. The last thing I'm going to say before closing, if I can get back to the presentation, just to reflect on, with that kind of infrastructure in place, we can put in place an accountability framework which allows us routinely to check our progress, to talk with presidents, to talk amongst ourselves. I just wanted to do a quick survey of accountability frameworks and what they're used for, again, based on the kind of dashboard that you just have seen. I picked on the University of North Carolina, the University of California. We do some accountability work here in our system with our risk assessment and performance funding. And you can see a variety of purposes that accountability frameworks have. They describe progress in key areas. They describe progress against agreed upon university goals. They can drive learning agenda. We can figure out by using accountability framework how we're doing, what can we learn from those who are doing it well and less well. They create feedback loops. We're constantly learning. We're constantly seeing where we're progressing and where we're not. We can learn from that. They can be used for institutional performance management, as we saw in the University of North Carolina, where there are clear agreements between the chancellors and the presidents. They can be used for individual performance management. How do we support leaders who are responsible for achieving these goals? So moving forward, the proposal is that our accountability framework is comprehensive and enables us to do each of these things. I'm going to leave it there, Madam Chair, but before I do, I want to return to this slide real quickly, and I want to notice that the tuition policy that we are considering today is actually something that needs to happen in the context of greater understanding of what we mean by student success, what we mean by university success, what we mean by a system, and what our system goals are. That, in effect, our tuition policy is super important. It gives the campuses the opportunity and the flexibility they need to establish revenues that work for them distinctively in their particular circumstances. It's actually of vital importance. But until we have this broader framework, which helps us understand those proposals for tuition in the context of our overall goals, I suspect it's not the right time at this moment to approve that, to consider that policy for approval, so I would propose from the seat, if I may, that we table that motion as anticipated on the agenda.
Okay. Right, and our agenda is going to reflect that, and we're coming to that. Dan, thank you very much, and you know, really from my point of view, like in terms of a reset, I feel like this is the first quarterly meeting where we're setting a context before getting into, you know, discussions of action items or potential action items. And that to me is, you know, kind of a reflection, right, of the bigger task in front of us, which is, as Dan has outlined, to really think through first what we want to achieve, what are our intended outcomes, particularly around student success, you know, but at each of the key levels, and then consider what are the appropriate strategies to get there. So, you know, I feel very good about this because I feel like this meeting is actually mirroring that, you know, that general concept that we're moving toward. So yeah, if we go to item 9, strategies for affordability, policy revision and rescission, obviously has been discussed. Action on this agenda item is being delayed until a later meeting because as we've just, you know, Dan's just been talking about, affordability and net price strategies are an integral component to the larger framework of system redesign in this phase 2 as we begin it. So I would just reiterate the point that tabling this item now should not affect the timing of the implementation should it be improved later. And therefore, instead of moving forward with this item at this time, I am going to offer to the board 2 items of new business, which are both before you at your place. The first is a resolution to affirm the direction and timeline for system redesign phase 2. Do you think I should read this? Peter and Andy, I look to you for direction. Can we assume that people will have read this, so I'm not going to read it out loud. So at this time, I'm going to move that the Board of Governors endorse the strategic direction for system redesign phase 2 and authorize the Chancellor to proceed in accordance with the time frame and outline presented today. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. Is there any discussion at this point?
Just to, if I could, Madam Chair, not really discussing that motion per se, but I'll kind of hide it under that. I just wanted to make a point on what the Chancellor just presented, and that is relative to the accountability measures, because this is something I think that is really important. And I kind of view it as almost a teeter-totter kind of thing where the presidents are in the middle and their responsibility is to hold accountability down through their university to see that they meet whatever those goals and items are identified. But the accountability goes the other direction too, from the presidents back to the Chancellor, to this Board of Governors, to our accountable partner would be the governor and the appointing authorities, you know, in the legislature, who ultimately are accountable to the taxpayers. I know I kind of wear my old legislator hat too often, but it's what I am and I can't help it. And I think it's important to make that connection, that part of this proposal is an accountability to both ends of the spectrum, from the taxpayers of Pennsylvania to the students at the, you know, the business end of this operation. And I think it's important to put that into perspective, that this isn't just about the student end of it. It's about being accountable to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, to the citizens of Pennsylvania as well.
And if I may, Governor, thanks for that comment. You know, one of the intended outcomes is to be able to go to, frankly, as I said earlier, a somewhat skeptical legislator and say, we've got this. That we actually are managing this enterprise as well as we possibly can, given the constraints that we're operating under, in the interest of our students, in the interest of our state. We're not yet in a position to do that. As you know, the various appropriations and planning processes that exist are largely more political than analytical, and shifting to a common set of industry practices at least can signal that our part of that bargain is being fulfilled in spades and that we expect the same return.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It will also be interesting, as we proceed with this, both in the discussion on with the work group on systemness, and then when we put it together, if we actually can have an accountability framework for the Board of Governors. I think that's a great point. Any other discussion, and including anybody on the phone? Senator Schwank, Speaker Turzai, anybody else on the phone want to comment? Okay.
Chairwoman
Yes.
Shapiro, just a technical question. Do you have the document that you talked about passing out, do we have that? Or is that somewhere, has that been emailed to us, or is it something different? I'm prepared to vote, but I just wanted to be sure that I'm not voting on something I don't know, I haven't seen.
Wait, hold on one second, because I can't read Andy's lips. He's really trying hard. Hold on. Okay, yeah. This was distributed very recently. Andy says, and Andy, keep correcting me if I'm wrong, we can have this read into the public record and have it sent to you, but help me, how does that actually technically qualify in terms of an action item?
You're going to...
Yeah, sorry. Hold on, Senator. Sent right now, right? Yeah. I see. Okay. All right, fine. So we are sending it to you now. I actually was thinking about reading this anyway because it was new. I will read it now so that it is, quote, read into the record.
Thank you.
Okay.
If it's something I missed in one of the emails, I apologize.
No. Yeah, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Okay, so let's see. I'll quickly read through the background. And this is an action, news business item number 1. Nearly 2 years ago, the system launched a top-to-bottom review with the assistance of national consultants that gathered input from hundreds of stakeholders. That review provided a foundation of data and observations upon which to build the future of the state system. Over the last year, the system moved from review to redesign, establishing strategic priorities and beginning to accomplish meaningful change to ensure student and university success. In focusing on student success, university strengths, and transform governance, the Board of Governors and the entire state system has embraced a bright future for the system and its universities. Continuing with this momentum, Chancellor Greenstein has outlined the next phase for system redesign that will run through the end of 2019. Through its implementation, defined system goals for student and university success will be achieved by universities acting with a higher degree of autonomy in setting strategic directions that work best for the students and communities they serve. In return, universities will be held to a higher standard of accountability for their performance. A critical next step is the development of a set of basic enterprise management tools to include clarity about the system's role and its goals for student and university success, April 2019, university strategies that align with system goals built according to a common framework that is made through December of 2019, university resource plans that align with and advance university strategies and are built according to a common framework, May through December of 2019, an accountability framework that ensures transparency and progress reporting, creates feedback loops that drive continuous improvement, and enables individual as well as institutional performance management. And that date to be completed is April 2019. A revised tuition policy that, among other things, delegates to university presidents responsibility for proposing for board approval undergraduate in-state tuition, April 2019, and, finally, a revised formula for distributing state appropriations that encourages progress towards system and university goals, and that is to be completed by July 2019. And again, the motion is that the Board of Governors endorse this resolution as the strategic direction for system redesign phase 2 and authorizes the Chancellor to proceed in accordance with the time frame presented today. Okay?
Thank you.
There's no other
Thanks.
supporting documentation except for the presentation by the Chancellor. Okay, thank you for that. Further discussion? Anything further? Okay. Hearing none, I will call for the motion. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, I believe the motion carries. Thank you very much. All right, the second item of new business, also before you, is to approve 2019-20 out-of-state tuition rates for Mansfield University. We are all aware of the great work that has been underway at Mansfield to redesign the university's pricing strategies, because any changes to the system's overall pricing policy will not be considered now until a later date. It is important to take action on this university-specific out-of-state tuition plan now, as it will have an impact on fall 2019 new student enrollment, for which recruitment efforts already are underway. So I move that the Board of Governors approve Mansfield University of Pennsylvania's 2019-2020 undergraduate out-of-state tuition rates equal to 130% of the system's in-state base rate for New York and New Jersey residents, and 150% of the system's in-state base rate for all other new out-of-state students. May I have a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion. I'm going to have to turn it over. Lois, do you have the? Okay, why don't you come and comment?
I didn't hear the question.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I was looking at you, but okay.
I did not hear your question.
How does that compare to the change we made last year for this year's tuition at Mansfield?
The tuition for this year was frozen for new students, so there was no increase.
But it was still a certain percentage above the rate set by the Board of Governors, right?
When this program was put in place, it resulted in a 25% price increase for students taking 15 credits a semester. So we still find ourselves being the highest priced university within the state system. We're trying to correct that.
So, I guess, is this tuition what students will be paying next year, the cohort coming in, higher than what the current freshman class is paying? That's what I'm trying to get to.
Yes, this will be considerably lower, and we recognize that in the implementation, we will have to address how we deal with continuing students. The arrangement in the pilot had the university guaranteeing the per credit rates for up to 5 years. And I'm still in the process of reading all the paperwork to fully understand what it is we committed to mom and dad and the students. We also had some financial aid awards that were committed for 4 years, which could oscillate given student performance. So the implementation for continuing students will almost have to be on a case-by-case basis. But we recognize that it will be untenable to have 2 students in the same class, one paying this much and another paying this much. we'll do what the adjustments that are necessary via targeted financial aid.
Great, but no.
So for the majority of students, for most students, and there will be individual student differences, but for the majority of students, they will come in paying less next year than what students, if they're taking a full-time load, than what students are paying this year for a full-time load. And this is a plan that will need to be transitioned in. It will apply to new students as the old students are grandfathered and phased out. Another big component of this is the university's flexibility to use institutional aid to really maximize the ability for students to be able to afford their education at Mansfield. So the proposal before you today really is just to approve changes for out-of-state tuition for new students, both new New York and New Jersey students, as well as new students from other states. Because I think since the plan is to go back to the system's basic in-state rate, that does not require an approval at this point in time. And there is flexibility through our procedures and standards in regard to the university's ability of institutional aid. So the only real action required of the board at this point in time to assist Mansfield in this transition is on out-of-state tuition.
I would just add that this proposal, taken together with the use of targeted financial aid, aims to grow new student recruitment, improve student retention, therefore we're talking about student success, and grow net revenue. Therefore we're talking about university success. So this is your approval of this motion today is a huge issue for Mansfield University because we are ready to go out next week with marketing information for our prospective students, telling them that we've rolled back pricing to make Mansfield affordable.
And if I may just build on that point, this is one of several tuition pilots that have been engaged across the universities. It's a great example of why a higher degree of autonomy is required. There is no silver bullet in a cutthroat, sorry if I may refer to higher education as a cutthroat competitive market, but it's a cutthroat competitive market, and in this state in particular, because there's arguably more higher education capacity than there are high school graduates to fill it. And our universities are competing with a narrower set of tools than others coming to the table. But this set of pilots together has fostered a huge amount of learning, to be fair. And while the Mansfield experience was not a good one, learning requires us to experiment and understand where we're succeeding and progressing in the way we want to, and also understand where to not proceed and why. And so I view this A as a success and B as an indication of the power of the approach that we're moving towards generally, which is to enable a great deal of innovation and autonomy. My old boss used to tell me that it's never a failure. It's not a failure if you don't, as long as you learn from it. And I think one of the things we're going to want to do as a system, as a whole, collection of universities and from the system office, is to compile what we're learning from a variety of different tuition pilots and make sure that we learn the lessons, both positive and negative, going forward, and that we incorporate that into the practices of our universities.
Well, I will say that your old boss could afford to, not win on so many things, but whatever. Okay, any further discussion? Okay, I'm going to put it to a vote then. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? Any opposed? Please say no. Okay, very good. Thank you very much. Next item, I'm going to now ask Neil Weaver, our Vice Chair for the University Success Committee, to introduce our next two items.
Thank you. Traditionally, the October board meeting kicks off the beginning of the budget request process for the upcoming fiscal year, and the system is required to submit its appropriations request to the Commonwealth by the end of the month. The budget estimates included in our materials today, beginning on page 26, is the beginning point for today's discussion of the system's financial requirements. Lois Johnson will now provide an overview of the system's budget requirements and the levers that influence it.
Thank you. And I want to thank you for the time to be here with you this morning. This is our traditional time of year to kick off our budget discussions with you. And as the chairwoman has already pointed out, today we're not going to make a decision on the system's educational general appropriation request. But we are going to talk a little bit about what our basic requirements are for the upcoming year, what some of the budget levers are that might influence those requirements, and to begin the discussion that will occur throughout the rest of this month. And I want to thank you in advance for your agreement to reconvene at some time before October 31st so that we can meet our statutory requirement in submitting our appropriations request to the Commonwealth before the end of October. So we're talking today about our educational general budget, but that is the majority of the state system's budget, but there are other components of our budget as well. In total, we have a $2.3 billion budget that incorporates our educational general budget of $1.7 billion, which meets our instructional needs, our administrative needs, and our academic and administrative facilities' ongoing operating budget requirements. It's the piece of our budget that is funded by state appropriations and tuition primarily, and that's why we're going to focus on that today. There's also an auxiliary portion of our budget that covers dining services, housing, student unions, recreation centers, those kinds of activities that are independent activities funded solely by user fees. Those activities and those user fees are established to help cover their administrative costs as well, but they are definitely a separate standalone organizations within our universities. There's also a restricted budget, and that restricted budget is made up of funds that are provided from external organizations, the federal government, for example. Our biggest pieces of restricted dollars are based on student financial aid from both the federal government and the state government through the state grant program. There's also sponsored research activities that are funded through that restricted portion of our budget. So back to what we're going to focus on today is that $1.7 billion of our educational and general budget. On the slide before you right now is the snapshot of where we are currently in our 2018-19 budget estimates, as well as moving forward to what our base expectations and requirements are based on university budgets for what to start our conversation for what our requirements are for 1920. This information is also provided on page 33 in your materials with a little bit more detail on that page. But I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about some of the items on this page as we move forward. Since you have this in your materials, I'm just going to focus on the next couple pages where we're going to talk about the different budget levers and how some of these estimates may be influenced by changes in our experience as we move forward. Certainly we'll talk about tuition and fees, and the main driver in there are two components. One is enrollment, and the other is price. At this point in time, these budgets exclude any anticipated changes in tuition rates or any anticipated changes in appropriation, because our purpose is to look at what are our basic requirements to move forward to carry our costs into one additional year, and then use that information with you to help determine, number one, how much the system will be requesting in the way of an appropriation, and then number two, later down the year in the spring, what implications there may actually be for tuition rates. So let's focus a little bit on what the revenue levers are, and then we'll talk a little bit about some of the expense levers. Obviously, state appropriation is 27% of our revenue right now in 2018-19. There are constraints on this lever. There have been for many years. You can see based on the information before you that we've had, yes, in recent years we have had some increases in our state appropriation, but in general we've been losing the purchasing power in the state appropriation as it has not kept up with inflationary changes. Tuition, fees, enrollment, these two work together as combined levers, and some of the information that we've been talking about with the board and been reviewing with the board, and I'll give you a little preview of that in just a minute, is what is that interrelationship between our price and our enrollment? Certainly, you are all aware that our enrollment has declined in recent years. There's some good reasons for that. Much of it is associated with a change in the number of students graduating from our high schools, just the demographics of Pennsylvania and the Northeast in general. But there's some other levers associated with enrollment if we dig deeper into why that change is occurring. Those are our primary resources, because when we look at tuition and fees, revenue, as well as state appropriation, that accounts for about 95% of the revenue in our education and general budget. Yes, we do fundraising. Yes, we have the ability to use one-time resources that our universities have been able to save up over the years, but those are minor levers within our budget revenue categories. We look at expenses and the cost levers. Obviously, our employees, as 75% of our budget is spent on our employee pay and benefits, management of our employee complement and our employee workforce and the costs associated with that is a big cost driver for our universities. Our universities have worked very diligently to manage and review all their complement. When positions become vacant, every single vacant position is reviewed for whether it's needed to be filled, whether there's a higher priority area that it needs to be moved to, or whether that position can be eliminated at the universities. So our universities are constantly retooling their workforce based on changes and turnover of our employees. Certainly, there's changes in how we spend our money to help improve student experiences, whether it be new academic programs, changes in curriculum designs, new modalities in providing those educations, or adjusting student services. A lot of our emphasis and focus in recent years in our university budgets and our university activities has been to improve student services, to improve student success, to provide better advising, et cetera, for our students to be able to really improve retention and graduation of our students. Certainly our universities have been focused on efficiencies. Collaborating through procurement has helped to reduce costs significantly, especially in areas energy savings, IT contracts, et cetera. We share administrative services across our universities in order to keep down the cost of some operational transactional activities. But there are other items that just get deferred from our budgets, whether it be maintenance for our educational general facilities or postponing new initiatives at our universities. So year in, year out, our universities are making the tough decisions to balance their budgets and still try to add to their ability to meet students' needs and improve the student experience at the universities. As I mentioned earlier, we talked about some of the constraints of some of these levers. We've talked about state appropriations. We spent some time yesterday digging deeper into some of these constraints with the board. We talked about the relationship between pricing and students and student enrollment. Some of those relationships exist in looking at income. How much does it cost our students from different income levels to attend our universities? We also looked at the change in high school graduates. Not only does it change in the number of students that are coming out of high school, but also the change in the number of high school graduates that are choosing to attend college. We've talked before with last spring and again yesterday, we talked about how we've seen a decline in enrollment at some of our universities, at all of our universities, in different income categories. And so it does leave the question of how much of what's occurring with our enrollment decline is impacted by our changes in pricing. So as we move forward, and I'm not going to go through all these with you, but as we move forward, we have basic budget estimates provided to us from our universities. These budget estimates are provided in your documents, beginning on page 39 for each university. This page here shows you the total impact of what those estimates are. We have enrollment estimates for the upcoming year that are about level. We're down about 170,000 students in our estimates for enrollment 170 students in our enrollment estimates for the upcoming year. But in looking at our enrollment changes in this past year and really the pattern in the last few years, it raises the question as to whether or not that's an optimistic enrollment estimate. So as the board continues to have discussions about our budgets, that might be one area that we want to look at. Do we need to make some adjustments to the information we've received from the universities for system-wide expectations regarding enrollment and the impact that may have on our tuition estimates and our fee estimates within our budgets? There are salary and wage and benefit estimates that are built within our budgets as well. These salary and wage estimates that are incorporated reflect only the last year of a collective bargaining agreement that's going to end in June 30th, 2019 for 7 out of 8 of our bargaining units, which means there are no new expenditures incorporated in here for any potential changes that may occur through those 7 collective bargaining agreements that will be under negotiation. So as we move forward with the board on what our budget estimates may be
and what our appropriations request may be. We may want to take into consideration the potential impact of collective bargaining agreements in our future estimates. Pension rates, healthcare rates, pension rates have come into alignment to be much more consistent with inflationary increases. Healthcare rates, we are anticipating rate increases at this point in time similar to national healthcare rate changes. So these are the basic assumptions that we have right now built into the budget. These are what result in a $44 million budget gap at this point in time. Before you, as I mentioned, beginning on page 39 are the university budget summaries that are supported, that drive this $44 million budget gap. And based on those university summaries, we've been able to take this budget gap and build some models moving forward as how we might look at potential changes in tuition, potential changes in enrollment, whether it be through retention, whether it be through freshman students, et cetera. But we anticipate that this is still a work in progress. There may be other liabilities of the system or other initiatives of the system that we may want to address in our budget requirements as we move forward to finalize the budget request documents, the appropriations request documents for the state system. Having said that, that brings us back to item 10 in your materials. Even though we are not going to make a decision at this point in time on the system's appropriation request, and we will continue to move forward in those discussions with you, it is recommended and proposed that you consider adopting at this point in time the 14 university budgets as submitted, as they are the basis on which our appropriations request is being built.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you. I appreciate it, and help me out, make sure I get through this action item correctly, because there have been a few moving parts. But I thank you for that, Lois, and clearly your office, you and Jim and your team are aligned with moving toward this more strategic, data-driven approach to making budgetary decisions. And again, as we discussed, it's going to take some time to digest all the information we received today, so the board will not be acting on the system's appropriation request. However, we will need to convene again before the end of October to do so. But in the meantime, we will act on the education in general, the E&G budgets of the universities in the Office of the Chancellor as presented in our materials. I believe that's on page 39. So let's all
Yes, the university budgets begin on page 39.
Yeah, there we go, beginning on page 39. Great. Okay, I believe I made it in the form of a motion, so is there a second? Thank you. Any discussion? Anyone on the phone? Okay, hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, very good, the motion carries. Neil?
Thank you. About this time every year, the system submits its capital budget to the Commonwealth. The system maintains a 5-year capital program based on the capital projects approved and the capital funds allocated by the governor. Jim Dillon will now review the proposed capital plan for the board approval.
Thank you, Vice Chair Weaver. Finally, something fun. 3 days. So every year we come before you around this time to get the Board of Governors to approve the capital plan. We ask that you approve 1 year, but we show you 5 years because of the nature of capital projects. They just take a long time to plan and execute. It's appropriate this year for you all to be here on this campus because you get to see the power of this capital program, which is given to us by the Governor's Office, to do long-term planning to impact the campus. What President Driscoll did not show you were before and after pictures of this campus over, I'm going to say, the last 10 or 15 years. But I can tell you, and you'll just believe me this time, that it has been remarkable what's been done. When President Driscoll came here, certainly there were pockets of excellence on this campus. But how it has been brought together through this capital plan
and their execution with that, with their trustees. And again, last night it was nice to talk to some trustees that were reminding me of some things we had worked on together that were maybe 10 years ago about this campus. And walking around this campus and viewing it, you can all agree that it looks and feels and creates a community for the students here that is remarkable. And so that is the power of these votes that we do every year for this capital plan. There is something new this year, and we're really, really excited about it. Excited in the way that engineers and facilities people and accountants and finance people get excited. And we got a $5 million increase, and that increase was very generous. I can tell you that it's very difficult for Secretary Albright to increase that money for us. When he first came on board, he was a neighbor of mine years ago, and I went to see him. And he had a very difficult time. I was very sympathetic about the state's finances. And I can tell you that when he took that job, he was the only person owning the debt of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Everybody else left. Nobody else was interested in being the person that was responsible and owning that debt problem that the Commonwealth was in. He had been working on it to fix it. He was very sympathetic to me asking for an increase of those capital dollars. And this year, Secretary Gabali and Secretary Albright came through and informed us that we would be getting that increase. That increase is dedicated to demolition. This is a huge return on investment for us. One, we don't pay back these dollars. They're not coming out of our operating budget. It's free money. It's very important that we deploy that. The second strength of it is that this board makes the decisions on how it's used. And the Commonwealth always accepts our plan. And that's a very important thing also. Our ability to do that long-term planning that I talked about before with those trustees, with previous presidents here at this university, and with President Driscoll, enables universities to do things that are really good. So that, in the capital plan, I'll direct your attention to page 56 in your materials. What we're showing you here is a 5-year summary. We show you 5 years because, as I said before, capital spending is lumpy, and projects are getting more and more expensive, so we are targeting fewer and fewer projects with a fixed amount. You will see for the first time those demolition projects starting to work their way in. That $5 million will go a very long way to help our universities save money through the elimination of old physical plant that no longer serves students in that community. Those even mothballed buildings cost us money to maintain. So many of us have learned, working with Cheney over the last year, the direct savings for closing a building. At Cheney, those numbers are anywhere from $400,000 to $800,000 a year just to close a building. But there's still some tails associated with mothballing. If we can demolish, that is a direct hit to the bottom line in a positive way for our universities and our operations. So those plans are going to be very, very helpful for our university. So the actual plan that you're approving is the first year. And I would take your attention, probably for the final time, to page 57. And you'll see there the 1819 plan on the top of that. Bloomsburg, Cheney, Mansfield, Shippensburg. That's the plan we'll approve today. We also would like to show you those out years so that you see those things coming. Many projects take multiple years to construct and also multiple years to pay, so you see them show up sometimes 2 years. We have a process. That process is on the page with the motion. We talk about university priorities, priority year positions in a spending plan, academic benefits, space, ADA needs, safety issues. We put points on these, we review them with campuses, and we do our best to keep our universities in an equitable position. Equitable by means of their share of the physical plant and our allocation. So again, on page 55, you see to the right on that shape, you can see that we're constantly bringing universities up to equity, and then as they wait for their next term, they get a little bit behind, and you can see how those things go over time. So we do our very best to keep that at zero, but that's impossible with the size of the project. You can't spend $49 million at Cheney, for example, and then not upset the equity issue. So in terms of those balances, but we do our best to keep that as balanced as possible. The last thing I would like to show you is the last page of this, which is an example of a capital plan. All of our projects need to be in a capital bill. we aren't the exclusive people to submit projects on our behalf. We have many, many friendly legislators that submit projects on our behalf. Those go in. But these are the ones that we are, when we get notice from the Commonwealth that there will be a capital bill, then we put our projects in that we know are coming and everything else like that. So we've really never had, it's a capital bill is just that authorization. Funding it is the hard part. But we just wanted to show you the kind of projects that are going into the capital bill and some of those demolitions. You'll notice that we did something different a few years ago, and we're currently working with her, is we have one demolition project for $50 million. That'll take 10 years to spend, maybe more, but now we don't have to go through and say demolition, block paving demolition. We just have a blanket that we then bring to you, and then you pass on that in our approved plan. So we'll do things like that that make a lot of sense so that we can be agile in terms of getting those projects executed. So, Vice Chair Weaver, that is the end of the report.
Okay. Thank you very much. So I'll put the motion on the table, and then we can have discussion. I move that the Board of Governors approve the fiscal year 2018-19 capital spending plan and submission of the lists of projects for legislative authorization. May I have a second?
Second.
Discussion. I actually have a question.
Sure.
My question is, can you give us a sense of the gap between, this is on page 58, number 4, so that's like, I guess, the blanket, statewide deferred maintenance related costs. What's the gap between that $500,000 and what in your mind it really is? Like if we were, I just want to get a sense of, where we are.
That's the Office of Budget recommendation, and that's actually $500 million for the Commonwealth.
Oh, it's $500 million. Oh, well, that's much
And as big
better.
as that number sounds, I can tell you for the Commonwealth,
But that's
it's not
still,
adequate.
yeah, okay. So even $500 million, I'm really glad I misread that. Yeah, so what is your,
It's a
what's your
blanket
assessment?
because there's constantly projects coming up, roofs caving in, sidewalks crashing, sinkholes in a really wet year, pipes bursting and things need to be replaced. And so it's a blanket thing that it's just out there that they spend against. And I think that's
Jim, I think the question is, what's the estimated total deferred maintenance cost?
Yeah, what would be the
Like in a perfect world,
really,
what
yeah.
what would be?
It'd be about $1 billion too.
Yeah, okay. That's what I wanted to get a sense of.
Approximately
Okay.
$11 billion.
Okay.
And what do we allocate every year out of the capital budget to
65. Oh, how much it goes into that? Well, I'll tell you, we, oftentimes our deferred maintenance gets wrapped up in a renovation project. So we work it out of that deferred maintenance and our operating budgets, which is fits and spurts, small numbers. It's not, sometimes we've come up with programs where we borrow money, but then you have that debt and then you can't do another one to follow it because you got to pay off that.
But at best case of the total capital budget spend every year, it can't be any more than $10 million against $1.8 billion or $1.2 billion.
Yes. In the campuses, we do a remarkable job keeping our campuses in really nice physical condition, but it's hard.
Yeah, they're beautiful. I agree with that. Yeah, I'm just, but sort of like behind the walls, you don't
The key
really know what's
93,
going on.
well, the key 93 money is for that deferred maintenance, and it's restricted. That goes up and down with the real estate sales tax. So I want to say we're expecting $16 million as a sample this year for that. And we do, and the universities, even though it feels like not a lot of money, they do a great job programming that.
All right, any further discussion or questions or comments? Okay, all in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed? Okay, thank you very much. Jim, don't go too far. I think the last part of our agenda is about resolutions to colleagues that we love and appreciate and are sad to say goodbye to, but excited to offer good wishes as they begin the next chapters in their lives. So today marks the last board meeting, it says here, for two such friends. We know it's more than that. We might get to that later. But Representative Mike Hanna, who will be retiring from the General Assembly this year, thus leaving his role on the board. And we also are saying goodbye to our Vice Chancellor of Administration and Finance, Jim Dillon, who will be retiring from the system in January after nearly 3 decades of remarkable service. And to honor these fine people, we want to read into the record resolutions of the board, and we will begin with Jim. So let's see, how did we decide we're going to do that? Because the resolution is there, but
Take it to the podium.
I don't know. All right, we'll take it to the podium. There we go. Thank you. I know, Jim, you love being in the spotlight.
I'm surprised.
Well, here it is. Let me read it. Whereas James S. Dillon has provided outstanding service to Pennsylvania's state system of higher education as Vice Chancellor for Administration and Finance since 2005, acting as a key member of the Office of the Chancellor's Executive Leadership Team. And whereas in total, James S. Dillon's service to the state system has spanned nearly 30 years, during which time he is responsible for establishing the system's treasury function, including the development, implementation, and oversight of the cash and capital management systems. And whereas James S. Dillon also managed the system's centralized services, including the shared administrative system, providing the universities with expertise, data, and tools by which to support more efficient operations and informed decision-making, and champion collaborative procurement, resulting in the system currently holding more than 70 strategically outsourced contracts, driving down costs and further increasing efficiencies. And whereas James S. Dillon co-developed the Academic Facilities Renovation Program, through which more than 40 academic and administrative buildings were improved across all system universities, and co-designed and implemented the system's privatized student housing program, utilizing third-party financing and developers to better serve the needs of students. And whereas James S. Dillon, while Vice Chancellor, also served as Acting Vice President of Finance Administration for Cheyney University of Pennsylvania for 2 years, providing financial leadership and management to the system's only historically black university at a crucial time. And whereas James S. Dillon has announced his decision to retire from the state system effective January 2nd, 2019, now therefore be resolved that the Board of Governors of Pennsylvania's state system of higher education expresses its sincere appreciation for these and the many other outstanding contributions James S. Dillon has made to public higher education and to the education of students in the state system during his distinguished tenure, and be it further resolved that the Board of Governors extends best wishes to James S. Dillon and his wife Lori in all of their future endeavors. I move that this resolution be approved by acclamation of the board. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? You don't get to vote. You don't get to vote, but you do get to make a few remarks.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. So that's what that feels like. I've been watching that for a lot of years. It was interesting that it hadn't really begun to sink in until last night when a couple of trustees from Indiana were telling us some war stories about us, doing some things from here from a very long time ago. And I was glad to see how their perspective was, and how one of them mentioned one of the issues where they thought that we as a team weren't going to get something done, and we did, and they
thought that I was the one that brought it over the finish line. He created the pathway. And I didn't see it that way. I just saw it as work. And that touched me for a moment about somebody that would see it that way and feel that way. So I was surprised at that. Some of those things I had forgotten. That's how long it was. Madam Chair, 29 years. It's a long time. I'm sick of me now. So what I can tell you is it's time for me to go on. This, working for the state system, was a family thing for me. Or else I wouldn't have spent 29 years at it. It was a great place to work. It was an honor to serve here. I try to count them up. Peter and I, over 77 presidents, 6 boards for me, 4 chancellors, etc. So it just is a lot of working with a lot of great people in a lot of great places. And as when my kids were smaller, we would drive by our universities, unbeknownst to the people that work there. In the evenings, we would stop by, and I would show them about all this stuff that my staff and I had worked on, and what we did with that building, and this thing, and that thing, and everything else. And it got to the point where the kids were like, okay, Dad, enough. Enough. So with that said, it was an honor to work. It was an honor to put my life's passion into this organization. And I wish nothing but the best for the state system. I'm really excited about the direction the Chancellor's going in, and I think that's one of the reasons why it's a lot easier to walk away, is this time. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Jim. And we really appreciate you'll be around for a few more months.
Thanks.
We continue down this path.
Admittedly, this is a little bit of inside baseball that not everyone will understand, but we have a board member who's leaving, and Harold, look, you're my friend. I pounded the table and said, don't do a resolution for Harold. He doesn't want the whereases. And I tried to convince everybody in this place that they shouldn't do this, but they insisted on doing it. I did have a slight influence, which is I read the resolution, and we mean this sincerely, but Harold's he's a modest kind of guy. I will draw your attention to a little caveat of hopeful humor that was injected into this. Of course, if I had a title, I'd have probably called it a Nod to Rotc, which is resolution backwards. But this is a resolution honoring the contributions of Harold C. Shields to the Board of Governors. Well, he doesn't have to if he doesn't want to. Harold, we love you. Whereas, and these actually should have been something like as it were, because Harold doesn't like whereases. Whereas Harold C. Shields was twice appointed to the Board of Governors of Pennsylvania State System of Higher Education and has provided distinguished service to the Board of Governors through his tenure on the board. And whereas Harold C. Shields has served as an advisor to chancellors and to the staff of the state system of as academic, financial, administrative, and human resources policies were developed to guide the system within the mission and strategic direction identified by the Board of Governors. And whereas Harold C. Shields, as chair of the Human Resources Committee, helped lead the search and selection process for 2 chancellors, and whereas Harold C. Shields also has served for more than 20 years as a member of the Council of Trustees at Edinburgh University of Pennsylvania, his alma mater, including 2 terms as chair, and also was a member of both the Edinburgh University Foundation and the Edinburgh University Alumni Association. And whereas in his role as trustee at Edinburgh University, Harold C. Shields further served the state system as president of the Pennsylvania Association of Councils of Trustees. And this is where, pay attention, Harold. Whereas Harold has repeatedly asked not to be recognized with a resolution, now therefore be it not resolved, the Board of Governors of Pennsylvania State System of Higher Education acknowledge the many outstanding contributions of Harold C. Shields to the board and all of the 14 member universities that comprise the state system, and most important to students across the system, and be it further unresolved that the Board of Governors extends best wishes to him in his future endeavors. So, I so move.
that a no vote? Because
Sorry, was approved.
I want to thank you. Really, it's been an honor to serve. It's 3 governors, 3 chancellors, and 3 chairs. I'm not sure if that is coincidental or not, but that's how the chips fly, I guess. I'd like to paraphrase a couple words from an Atlanta preacher. He says, there will be dark and difficult days ahead, but we as a system will get there one day. And I honestly believe that. I think we have a great leader, Dan, and obviously with Cindy and Sam and David leading the executive committee and all of you sitting there. We're going to have some success over the next couple of years. And I look forward to coming back and seeing that. In fact, if I look out about 5 years, I think, Dan, your name will be Moses. Your name will be Moses because you will have led the system out of economic bondage into the promised land of milk and honey. Now, I should have put a disclaimer in there, so if I offend anyone, whether it be religious or not, I apologize ahead of time, but I'm leaving in a couple of months, so who cares? So to the student trustees, and I talked to you guys last night, sincerely for all the students, take advantage. You're sitting among a lot of really great individuals. Draw out all the information you can. Talk to them on a daily basis. Network is critically important. So take all that information. When you go back to your campuses, tell the young men and women there to really take advantage of all the stuff that their professors and their administrators can do for you. And to the presidents, 5 years from now, I want to see all of you sitting in the same seat, with the exception of 2. Mike, I wish we could keep you around, but I understand and I respect it. And Aaron, you'll be teaching Sunday school, I know, and looking back, all the great things you did for Cheney University. And to Ken, is Ken still here? Ken? There is more common ground than there are differences among us. And so I hope that somehow that over the years that we can find the things that bind us together and really in the spirit of cooperation do much better as a system with all the faculty and all the members of this system. And Audrey, is Audrey here? Audrey, thank you so much. You've done so much. You've been taking phone calls from people asking crazy questions, which I should already know, but really thank you for all your help. And to all the staff, I can't mention all the names because I'll forget somebody, but all of you sitting there, all the staff, thank you for all of your help and support. It's been great. There's been a lot of great people I've had an opportunity to sit with at that table, and it's been a lot of fun. Through a lot of good times, and sometimes it's been tough. So thank you all so much. Thank you.
That could be a new record. And yes, we'll get a picture. And Sam had the honor. Sam wanted the honor to read the non-resolution. And so I just want to take this moment to thank you from the bottom of my heart. You have been a mentor and an advisor and a psychiatrist. So many things to me to help me in these past 2 years. You're a brilliant guy, and you're also very wise, and that's a fantastic. And you've got a calm, an equanimity about you. So it's very much appreciated. You will be sorely, sorely missed. And we can do a picture. Sam? Yeah. Okay. Come on.
No.
All right. Let's go.
Just because you haven't been to Pocatello, Idaho, doesn't mean you can't be in this picture.
Thank you. Okay. Wonderful. Okay. And Representative Mike Hanna, as we just said, also will be leaving the board. And I don't think Representative Hannah, you're on because I believe we're in session.
Hey guys, this is Adam Wagenseller. We actually are going to get Rep. Hannah on the phone right now, so he'd like to say something after the resolution is read then.
Terrific. Okay, wonderful.
All right, thank you so much. Yep.
Let me know, is it, are you on now? Can I read?
I just have to find him on the floor. If you give me 2 seconds, thanks.
I will do that. Thank you, Speaker.
Hello?
Hello.
Hello, sorry, we're on the House floor and Adam's just got me on the phone here. Go ahead.
Well, we're delighted that you were kidnapped for a couple of minutes because we want to honor you, Representative Hannah, for your dedication and your incredible service. And I am now going to read a resolution for you, and we will, if you would like, deliver a plaque to your office. Dan and I, we can do a little song and dance or something, to present it to you. But at least we are happy to have the opportunity to have you on so that we can read this. Whereas Representative Thank you. Okay. Whereas Representative Michael K. Hannah has provided distinguished service to the Board of Governors of Pennsylvania's State System of Higher Education since first being appointed to the board in January 2005 and throughout his tenure. Whereas Representative Hannah has served as an advisor to board members, chancellors, presidents, and to the staff of the state system as academic, financial, administrative, and human resources policies were developed to guide the system within the mission and strategic direction identified by the Board of Governors. And whereas Representative Hannah has contributed significantly to discussions and deliberations as a member of various committees, most recently the Student Success Committee, and whereas Representative Hannah, as a member of the Pennsylvania House of Representatives, has served the district that is home to Lock Haven University of Pennsylvania, his alma mater, during his nearly 3 decades in office, and whereas Representative Hannah has been a strong advocate for both the university and the entire state system throughout his tenure in the legislature, and has also served on the Lock Haven University Council of Trustees and both the Lock Haven University Alumni Board and the Lock Haven University Foundation. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Governors does acknowledge the dedicated service and contributions of Representative Michael K. Hannah to the board, to the state system, and its 14-member universities, and most important, to students across the system. And be it further resolved that the Board of Governors extends best wishes to him in all of his future endeavors. I move that this resolution be approved by acclamation of the board. Is there a second?
Second.
Wonderful. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Terrific. I assume there are none opposed. I'm not going to even ask. So this is approved by acclamation. Representative Hannah, would you like to say a few words?
Yes, if I could. I want to first thank you and thank the entire board for the recognition. And then I want to apologize for not being there. Of course, I really would prefer to be there than to be on the House floor, but that's just not my choice. So I apologize for not being there today and being able to take part in my last meeting. What I would like to say to all of you is you have my pledge that even though I'm leaving the board, that I will stay engaged with the system and stay engaged with the member universities. And I pledge to you that I'll be happy to work with you in any way that I can to advance our mission, and especially the work of the redesign. I think we're headed in the right direction now, and I want to be as helpful as I can in helping and accomplishing that redesign for the system. So again, I want to thank everybody and I apologize for not being there. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, new business. Is there any other business to come before the board? Okay, hearing none, I move that we adjourn. Unless there is an objection, we stand adjourned. Thank you all so much.
Good job.